From the time Harry was living in that tiny closet under the stairs to the time he was finding Horcruxes in the woods, we have been rooting for Harry, Hermione, and Ron. But reading the stories and watching the movies as a child is much different than experiencing these same stories as an adult. Here are 10 things kids don't understand in Harry Potter.
Look, stop. You're going to take someone's eye out.
Wizards sure do love their house elves. Poor Dobby. He is so loving, optimistic, and traumatized. This little house elf wants so desperately to help Harry, but he's a bit clumsy and unaware that noise travels.
Dobby, shush, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you or anything.
He has some of the funniest lines in the film, but he's so used to being abused by his owners that he hurts himself when he feels like he has done something wrong. How sad. At first, Hermione seemed to be the only one who had a problem with how elves were being treated in the magical world. Everyone else just sort of went along with it. Do they not teach the history of the world at Hogwarts? Hermione seems to be the only one who reads in these stories. Dobby the house elf is one of the most honest and loyal characters in the whole series. He comes from a long line of enslaved house elves. Because of this, he doesn't want too much freedom. Just the little taste he got from Harry's sock was enough. He went on to work in the kitchen at Hogwarts for a tiny wage and only had 1 day off a month. And all kids everywhere were just fine with this. It's not until adulthood that you realize how messed up this whole situation is. Hogwarts, the school of detrimental studies. Very few parents would ever consider sending their children to a school with moving staircases, fatal screaming mandrakes, flying broomsticks, enormous serpents, and an evil wizard who is trying to rule the world. What a lovely story for children. Seriously, all the parents were cool with this? A kid actually passed away the last time the Chamber of Secrets was opened. While this might sound scary to most, young kids don't truly understand what this entails, but parents who watch the films and read the books are rightfully horrified during these brushes with the Grim Reaper. It should have been a big warning sign when Ron Weasley's mom told Harry to run at full speed into a brick pillar at a platform 9 3/4. And while the moving staircases are kind of awesome, one has to wonder how many students fell from great heights after a small misstep. All that's protecting the young wizards and witches from the fatal scream of the mandrake are those little earmuffs. No one seems concerned about kids plummeting to the ground during a lively Quidditch game. If Hogwarts were a real place, all of the professors would have been arrested for child endangerment.
Gave the ministry quite a bit of grief a few years ago. Perhaps this will show you why.
Wherefore art thou soul? It's not bad enough that practically all of the students at Hogwarts are potentially fighting just to stay alive. There's a major deterrent for breaking the laws of the wizarding world. The biggest sanction is not jail or even capital punishment. If you commit a big enough crime, your soul will literally get sucked out of your body via a Dementor's kiss. These terrifying nightmare fodder, ghost-like banshee creatures are the police force. Yep. If you commit a serious crime, they'll eat your soul, leaving you to live out the rest of your days as an empty shell of a wizard. They try to eat Harry's soul too. Yikes. Who saw these things and thought, sure, let's put these abominations in charge of the law and order of the land? Although the ministry is supposed to control their actions, they seem to be more interested in listening to the Dark Lord's orders. Kids and adults are rightfully scared out of their wits by these Dementors, but adults can really see just how disturbing this whole concept is. Commit a crime and lose the very thing that makes you, you. So far, slavery, perilous living situations, and torture are all present in the Harry Potter world. And considering that these books are meant for children, it's no surprise that parents are raising eyebrows. Dumbledore's questionable hiring methods. We have a lot of questions about the qualifications and mental competence of the professors at Hogwarts. From werewolves to malignant narcissists to totally blithering nincompoops. It's as if Hogwarts scrapes the bottom of the barrel when picking its faculty. It seems that Dumbledore and the school board will let just about anybody be in charge of a classroom full of young, helpless, and innocent students. They're teaching these kids how to cast dangerous spells and wield weapons without so much as a background check. What does that application and hiring process look like? From the looks of things, Dumbledore has a hard time filling in the defense against dark arts position. So whenever he finds himself a newly interested teacher, he asks them the least amount of questions. After all, it's a well-known fact that professors who teach this subject don't always make it through the year. So whenever Dumbledore gets a contestant, he basically just says, "Fantastic, you're hired." wondered. Of course, all kids have wondered from time to time if one of their teachers was borderline unstable, but this takes it to a whole new level.
To have mastered spells that you wouldn't attempt in your dizziest daydreams.
Slipping people potions like it's no big deal. In the normal society in which we muggles live, it's considered highly illegal to slip something into someone else's drink. But it looks like there are very different set of rules in the Harry Potter world. Hogwarts is a magical place. However, some of the students are being taught how to brew potions that will make someone fall in love with them. In fact, the wizarding world acts like love potions aren't a big deal. So, what if your crush doesn't like you back? There's a potion for that. Fred and George Weasley once said that love potions are one of the most popular items that they sell. So we've got a bunch of pubescent teenagers with hormones coursing through their veins, and they have access to a potion that destroys inhibitions, reason, and free will? We're surprised Hogwarts didn't turn into a debaucherous love dungeon. In the books, J.K. Rowling writes that anyone who has children under the spell of a love potion is doomed. You think? Talk about the worst hangover of all time. As an adult, you realize the implications of this irresponsible potion, and it's all just too creepy. Here you go, teenage Hermione. Now don't destroy the universe. It's no wonder Hermione is so smart and well-educated. She was given a time turner by Dumbledore so she could study more. Now, most children and adults don't know much about the concept of time travel, but the adults know enough to ask a few important questions. The most obvious question is this: why would you trust a teenager with such a complicated gadget that is capable of so much chaos? Was Dumbledore not concerned at all that Hermione would rip an irreparable hole in the fabric of time and space? Her prefrontal cortex in her brain is still developing at her age. That's the part of the brain responsible for impulse control. Not a wise idea, Dumbledore, but a necessary one nonetheless. When he gives her the time turner, he warns Hermione not to let her past self see her. Apparently, witches and wizards who meet themselves during a time jump often go completely bonkers. Imagine running into your future self. That's enough to jumble anyone's brains. Oddly enough, Dumbledore was totally okay with risking Hermione's sanity and the fate of the universe just so she could get good grades. This sort of behavior is totally acceptable at Hogwarts. However, it's no secret that Dumbledore had ulterior motives.
Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see then.
Classism and race. The wizards and witches at Hogwarts are dealing with major cases of classism and racism. We agree that it's important for kids to learn to recognize this type of appalling behavior, but when you watch the films and read the books as an adult, these themes hold a much heavier weight. This is because we are aware of the severe consequences of this type of thinking. Kids don't fully grasp that racism can cause a lot of harm and end up violating people's rights. That's what makes Voldemort particularly scary to adults. The dude led a movement to cause a fight between the pureblood witches and wizards and Muggleborns. And while some kids are too young to understand how devastating this kind of movement can be, adults easily recognize it. The world has not forgotten what happened in World War I, which is why we don't take racism lightly. At first glance, Voldemort might come off as a fictional character, but when put under the scope, he's a spitting image of an evil dictator who must not be named. Voldemort encourages attacks on Muggles and tries to assert pureblood supremacy, and then there are the classist and racist themes surrounding the house-elves. Pretty dark for a kid's story, right? The Weasley twin conundrum. The Weasley twins are responsible for most of the rebellious pranks at Hogwarts. At the surface level, they seem like your typical older brothers. They pick on their kin like any normal sibling, right? Wrong. Let's just look at all of the horrible pranks they played on poor Ron. One of the most psychologically damaging pranks was played on Ron when he was just 3 years old. Ron was doing normal toddler things like accidentally breaking his brother Fred's broomstick. So what does Fred do? He emotionally scars Ron for life. Apparently, he turned Ron's teddy bear into a big hairy spider as payback. So 1 minute little Ron is snuggling up to his teddy bear for comfort, and the next minute he realizes he's holding a giant spider with hairy legs. That caused Ron to have a lifelong phobia of spiders. Not cool, Fred. And then there was the time they gave Ron an acid pop that burned a hole in his tongue. That's something only a psychopath would do to a child. While these twins help Ron, Harry, and Hermione out from time to time, they don't always have their best intentions at heart. Hidden innuendos. When you're dealing with a story about teenagers, it's best to be careful what you say. But J.K. Rowling put a lot of innuendos in the book that kids probably don't understand. Let's start with Moaning Myrtle. She's the melancholy poltergeist who hangs out in the bathroom. Sure, she's sad and lonely, but that's no excuse for her inappropriate behavior. It seems Myrtle likes to play Peeping Tom on any of the young boys who visit her bathrooms. She spied on both Cedric and Harry. She didn't even seem to feel ashamed about it. And then there's her name. Interesting choice of words, but these stories are absolutely littered with double entendres and hidden innuendos. There was the time that Ron was asking about that unexpected planet. The professor told him that it was Uranus. Then Ron asked if he could look at Uranus too. It also seems that wands represent another part of the human anatomy. This is evident when Cedric is bragging about the size of his wand. He boasts that it is 12¼ inches long and that he just polished it last night, which is, highly inappropriate.
Come up with another clever idea to get us killed. Or worse, expelled.
What's Dumbledore's deal? Dumbledore seems like a loving, caring headmaster, but he knowingly puts young Harry in a lot of danger. It's kind of disturbing that every year Dumbledore sends young Harry to try and defeat powerful beasts, and the latest version of He Who Must Not Be Named. Looper has even gone so far as to call Dumbledore a Machiavellian sociopath. Some would argue that Dumbledore is just grooming Harry to become the most powerful wizard in the world, so he can save everyone from Voldemort. But he is super irresponsible considering Harry's age and abilities. He hires crazy, incompetent, and downright dangerous professors. This action alone endangers all of his students at Hogwarts. But then he subjects Harry to scenarios that involve torture, exposes him to debilitating cruelty, and shows him things no child should ever see. We're not sure if Dumbledore is a sociopath or just way too old to be in charge of children, but most parents would probably have a big problem with his methods. Dumbledore is either incredibly cruel or incredibly dedicated to saving the wizarding world. Either way, Dumbledore did the best he could and ended up grooming Harry for his destiny. He even sacrificed himself to ensure that the boy who lived would, live once more. Although Dumbledore might get a bad rep, we can't help but love him as much as he loves lemon drops. What are some other adult themes you noticed in Harry Potter? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching The Things. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and hit that notification bell to be the first to see our newest videos. See you next time!